Have you ever been in a company that had a toxic environment?
Yes, I have, actually, in the manufacturing sector. If you're in a company that is very abusive, you have people leaving all the time. Company culture actually has direct impact on your employee engagements, your retention strategies,
Sure.
and the organizational success as a goal. Sometimes it's not just about the CEO. Sometimes it will be about the employees. When it comes to culture, it's non-negotiable.
So if people are leaving workplaces because they say it's toxic, that's a popular phrase we hear in our job markets today. Why did you leave? The place was toxic. It was affecting my mental health. It was affecting my mental health. Do you think this happening is because talents lacking the ability to adapt, or actually companies are having toxic company cultures?
Sometimes it's not just about the company culture. It's about the transparency that exists within the organization. If you want to really know whether your culture is toxic, you actually have to look at your attrition rate.
Are companies and organizations in Ghana very conscious about company culture?
People go and they don't even last, and they are always advertising for the same
for the position.
So a lot of people were asking, why is that people leaving this organization? The owner of the company is not directly involved in the company and has handed it over to people to manage, and those people are responsible for ensuring that the company thrives, and they are not really concerned because it doesn't belong to them.
We can conclude that company culture is not just a buzzword. It's very key and vital to a company's success. You're welcome to Career Pods by Vacancies. My name is Yara Ofori and I'm your host. On this episode, we will be having a discussion on a topic that often sparks a debate, and that is company culture. We're going to discuss if it's just a buzzword or is indeed a success to companies. Is it just a trendy word or is vital to a company's success? I'm honored to be joined again by Michael Ike, an HR expert in talent acquisition. With his extensive experience in shaping organizational strategies, Michael will share his thoughts on why company culture matters, how it impacts employee engagement, and its vital role to the long-term success of an organization or company. Hello, Michael.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you also doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you for having me too.
It's a pleasure. So, Michael, have you ever been in a company that had a toxic environment, or you've had a toxic experience with a company before?
Yes, I have, actually, in the manufacturing sector.
Okay.
Yeah, so, most of these manufacturing sectors, we have foreigners being part of us. And because we have these factory workers as well, most of them are being treated like unfairly because they have the should I say the foreigners do have this notion that this poor kind of like just usual workers, they just come in, work and go, they are being paid. And no, in a manufacturing firm, if you are in such position, you are paid a wage, not a salary.
Okay.
Yes, so based on the work you've done. So I've been in so I'll say I've been in a space like that. So what happened was, the company culture was quite bad in terms of flexibility, and also I think the way work is being done. Actually.
Okay.
I think if you're in a company that is very abusive, you have people leaving all the time. So for me, I was there and it was affecting my mental health actually. And I think one time we had a meeting and I was trying to voice it out, but I was being told that I'm trying to defend the workers. And as an HR, there should be a balance. Like you are actually the one between the
organization
workers,
and the employees.
Yes, the employees and the organization. So, as an HR, I'll definitely have to find my way out and go to a place where I know at least there's active listening when it comes to certain concerns concerning the culture of the organization.
Active listening. We will talk more about that and delve deeper into the company culture. But in the first place, what does company culture even mean?
Yeah, so for me, company culture has to do with the shared values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors of how work gets is get you how you get work done, and also how people interact within the organization. So that's what I would say. And you know that company culture actually has direct impact or influence on your employee engagements, your retention
For
strategies,
sure.
and the organizational success as a goal. So yes, that's what I'll say culture
The
is.
company culture is what will or how can organizations, or no, let me put it this way. Is there a general like company culture? You know, every organization has its company culture that we agree, but are there like fundamental principles that or every organization should have this in order to have your employees being retained, to see your organization growing? Is there, do we have something like that?
Yes, so there are foundational norms that actually every organization should have, especially when it comes to communication.
Mm.
You know, clear communication is one of those foundations. Because if let's say someone is joining the organization, you need to make it clear to the person what your values are,
Mm-hmm.
so that once they join, they're able to blend. So through your orientation, you know, you make it aware to the person that okay, you know, this is what happens within our organization. So now the person is coming with an expectation also. So you are trying to create that alignment between you, the organization, and the person coming to join you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you are able to create that alignment, then definitely the person will be able to blend in.
Yes, that's
Yes.
true.
So there's definitely a
The
foundational.
foundational norm or
Yes,
principle.
principle.
So with a startup, let's take a startup, one a company that is now starting out and recruiting people. Um, how do they build a positive culture, or how do they even identify the culture such that it's not that what's maybe or how the CEO thinks or how he wants it to go, that's how it should necessarily go, even if it's not good for the company. So how do a startup build a positive culture?
So for startups, you know, since they are now starting, definitely there are certain values you would like to put in place that the employee would have to follow. You know, so these policies are kind of developed from scratch. So once you develop those policies and this you have people coming in to join the organization as you're growing, you realize that they adapt to it. So once they are able to adapt to it, any other person that comes in to join will also follow suit. So for startups, you know, sometimes you can have a startup, they work long hours because they're trying to achieve their goals and all those kind of things. But I feel if startups begin to make like expand gradually, they are actually supposed to start shaping their culture.
Right from the onset.
Yes, right from the onset, so that it doesn't become like a norm. No, if that so we have what we call the company climate as well. So if that climate is actually becomes stabilized, you realize that it's gradually transitions into a company culture that comes to stay forever, and it becomes very difficult for people to get away from
So
it. Yes.
that's interesting. Speaking about that and the fact that you spoke about you have been in a toxic environment before, and as the HR, you were talking on behalf of the people, the management wasn't listening. In a situation where now the management has become a negative influence in like the company because of that, employees are not satisfied. How should fellow HR and even employees go about such a situation? Because in your situation, you tried your best and they were not listening, so you left. You eventually left. But
Yes.
how can that situation be solved? What can be done?
Okay, so for me, it will be more of so management actually consists of a group of people, but if it's just one person within that level, then that person will have to you definitely have to give that person some form of coaching. But if you realize that it's still persistent, then you need to relay the information to the other leadership team so that the person can be dealt with. So you know that if you don't deal with such a thing, it actually directly affects the employees as well.
Yes.
And definitely you realize that um, people begin to leave the
What if
organization.
it's the CEO?
So if it's the CEO, trust me, I've actually had someone ask me this question before.
Mm-hmm.
That what if it's the CEO?
What
You
do you
know,
do?
for me, I believe if you're a CEO, you're actually the first point of, should I say, you're actually an example to the people you're actually managing. So you should be willing to know what actually will work within the organization. And sometimes it's not just about the CEO. Sometimes it could be about the employees. Sometimes employees are not willing to adapt to the culture because they feel like, oh, they want to do what they like. But in the case where the culture is very bad, then that one definitely will have to keep pushing for the CEO to like change his mind, definitely. Because I feel if we advise, okay, the CEO that he needs to take maybe some form of training. Some companies, especially if it's an SME, it's just the CEO. But if you're in a larger company, you have board of directors as
Yes.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if it's a larger company and there are board of directors, then that one you have to escalate to them, so that something can be done about the situation. But if it's in maybe a small company where it's the CEO that actually manages everything, then with that one you would have to let the CEO know that okay, this is the situation. If they're not willing to listen, then trust me, there's nothing
The
you can do
company
about
would
it.
would close. Oh, that can happen
Yeah, it can happen. That's happened severally. I've actually witnessed certain things like
because
that.
of company culture.
Yes.
Hmm.
So you see, the thing is, sometimes people feel like they are the owners of the company. They want to do whatever they like.
Yes,
They
that's
can even shout
exactly.
at their own
So they
employees.
brand the company to what they like and not what is best
Exactly.
for the company and the employees.
And employees. So the thing is, sometimes they feel like if you don't want, you can leave. Someone else occupy the role.
Hmm.
But if you are having a very high turnover rate, it's bad on your
For
side.
you,
Yes, it
yes,
affects
yes.
the reputation of your organization. So I think for that, it's something that these CEOs should put behind, like they should put at the back part of their mind. That's okay. If I have a very high turnover, if I'm going to look for investors one day, it's going to be very difficult.
That's true. That's true.
Yes.
So we've spoken on the part of the CEOs and management. Coming to the employees, you mentioned coaching. In regards to if there's a company culture or a negative influence and it's coming from the side of the management. Now let's talk about the employees. What if there's an employee that is a misfit, is not adapting to the company culture? What should be done about such an employee?
So with such an employee, you can have a one-on-one with the person, try to understand their perspectives, and once you do that, you realize that okay, the person is also willing to adapt. So once the person is willing to adapt, you give the person the form of training or mentorship that the person needs, provide them with your expectations and how they can actually adapt to your culture. If it happens that the person is still holding on to their own values or their own perspectives and is going to affect
Affect.
the organization, when it comes to culture, it's non-negotiable.
Hmm.
Yes, because
I
once
like
it's
that.
yes, once it's one person that is actually trying to disrupt the culture, you realize that if you leave it that way, it's going to affect the other people within the organization. So if it happens that the person is not willing to adapt, then you have to find a nice way of letting the person go. So you just let the person transition out
Okay.
because you can't risk that at all.
That's okay. So if people are leaving workplaces because they say it's toxic, the environment is not good for that's a popular phrase we hear in our job markets today. Why did you leave? The place was toxic, it was affecting my mental health, it was affecting my mental health. Do you think this happening is because of the lack of talents not being like they lacking the ability to adapt, or actually companies are having toxic company cultures or like company culture?
Okay, so I've not really worked with in some of these companies, but I've worked in like various companies. So I would say that sometimes it's not just about the company culture; it's about the transparency that exists within the organization.
Okay.
Sometimes you go to certain organizations, certain things are hidden, you feel okay, you cannot be trusted, and now it begins to affect your mental health, and you go like, okay, they don't value me, and like there are a lot of things that people you know think of, and when it happens like that, for every organization there should be some form of flexibility, there should be transparency, open communication, feedback. You get it? So once you are getting feedback from employees, you know the expectations as well. And it makes it more easier for you to be able to know whether you are doing well as a company or not, in terms of ensuring your employees' well-being and their should I say their personal developments, professional development, and all that. So if you're not getting feedback from your employees, then I don't think as a company you're doing well. So sometimes you go to certain companies, they have suggestion box where employees can anonymously put their concerns, or maybe share, use a link actually to share their concerns anonymously, because people will not want they don't
Yes,
want to
yeah,
be
yes,
known.
they don't want to
Yes,
be known.
yes. So I think feedback is very, very important. So it's not just about the company, but it's also about the individual as well. So there should be a balance. Definitely, there are certain organizations where the culture is very toxic, but I think those companies could actually turn around and make things better when they receive feedback from their employees. So one thing that the lining factor could be that if you want to really know whether your culture is toxic, you actually have to look at your attrition rate, or let's say your retention rate.
That's a good point.
Yes. So if you see that people are leaving, you now have to come and ask yourself that, okay, why are people leaving the organization? You're doing exit interviews and all that. Sometimes people will not tell you the actual reason why they are leaving, even though you are conducting exit interviews. But if they are within the organization, they are still with you, and you are getting feedback from them, it actually gives you an idea of how to go about certain things. I think that one is much more better.
I'm glad you've even touched on some ways companies can build a positive culture. You've spoken about
Yes.
the feedback. You the one you just mentioned.
Yeah, exit
Yes,
interviews.
having interviews, and also going back to look at the people who are staying and the people who are leaving. What other ways can a company like practically develop a positive culture?
Okay, so I think it would be a clear communication. So you need to be clear when you're communicating to your employees. Sometimes you might communicate, but it might not be clear to them. They don't really understand what you're trying to relate to them. So communication is very key. So effective communication is very, very, very key when it comes to building a positive culture. Also, if you really want to um, ensure a positive culture, I think you can also reward people who are actually living
Doing
it.
well, yes.
Yes. So if you do that, it encourages the others to follow suit. And I think also you can I think I've mentioned feedback, getting feedback from your employees. It also helps a lot. And I think other recognition programs as well will help. And also I think you can conduct make your employees join and just kind of have a deba, where people are able to communicate. Yes, so I think these are some of the things that can actually help.
I like the points. Do you think or are companies and organizations in Ghana, let's take Ghana for now, very conscious about company culture as an HR expert and with your years of experience?
Yes, so I would say especially companies that have a touch of, should I say, I don't want to use a certain word, but I would I would say that companies who have actually had a feel, or an experience of how these Western companies go about their things, are able to ensure a positive culture within their own space. There are companies where you visit, you realize that it's actually not a good place to be. And all these things actually transitions right from the candidate's experience down to offboarding. All these things translate into negative, should I say, um, reputation of your
Yes, of your
organization. Because
organization.
when someone engages with, mostly people say first impression really matters.
Count.
They engage with the organization, they realize that, or possibly people are leaving the organization. Once they leave the organization, definitely they might have people who would like to join. They know people who might like to join the organization and all that. And what are they going to tell the people about your organization? You get it? It's going to be very bad. So recently, I saw some posts on LinkedIn. People were lambasting a particular company. They're like, "Why are people leaving this?" There are two companies. I don't want to mention their names, but people go and they don't even last, and they are always
Yes,
advertising for the
for
same.
the
So
positions.
a lot of people were asking, why is that people leaving this organization? So they should tell you that yes, there are actually companies with a very bad
Reputation.
company culture.
Hmm.
Yes, so yes, I would say there are actually companies that have very toxic company culture.
Now the question is, why are organizations not concerned about like the company culture? Because with the example you just give, there are people who were complaining about maybe two companies that people are always leaving because of the company culture. What do you think accounts to companies, organizations not being concerned about company culture?
Okay, so there could be a lot of factors. One, it could be that the owner of the company is not directly involved in the company and has handed it over to people to manage. And those people are responsible for ensuring that the company thrives. And they are not really concerned because it doesn't belong to them. There are a lot of underlying factors actually. And also it could be that maybe that's what they have known right from the time they started the organization. And they are scared of change. So that's why change management comes in. Most of the time people say change is very, very difficult. But when you embrace change, you realize that no, things can be done differently. So I think this is where change management also plays a role. So as I mentioned, it could be that it's not that they are not concerned, but also there are reasons why they wouldn't want to embrace
Change.
change. You get it? So I think it's that you wouldn't be able to tell directly what exactly the underlying factor is. But I feel one, it could be because of change, or two, maybe those managing the organization and outside the organization doesn't really belong to
Yes, as
them.
they don't really care
Yeah,
about
so they
it.
don't really care about it.
Because from the conversation so far, we can conclude that company culture is not just a buzzword. It's
Yes.
very key and vital to a company's success.
Yes.
So companies and managers or management need to be concerned about their company culture. And I believe the best way to also know about your company culture is what the employees say about the company.
Exactly.
Feedback from the employees, because with that, you know if you're actually having a positive company culture or not.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for those points. Now, coming to new employees, new talents, people who join an organization, we are going to take this into two sides. How do organizations make sure that they don't end up overwhelming new hires with company culture, and how do the new talents also make sure that they are not overwhelmed by company culture, where maybe a company that they could have stayed and impacted and helped, because of company culture they end up quitting before like they have to, but they need to.
Okay, so let's take it. So for the new highs joining, what organizations can do is you need to um, integrate your values into your onboarding process. So once the person is actually, when the person is joining the organization, the person would actually follow the process. It's easier for the person to know your values and expectations of them. You can also assign to them buddies. So people who, yes, people who actually mentor them, guide them through and help them navigate through the company. Well, because they are now joining, so they don't know a lot about.
Yes.
Yes, so assigning them buddies too is very very important. And also, I think you can also put them, um, give them the room for them to be able to develop themselves. Put them on maybe some form of training, or maybe some personal development listen activity or something that will help them. So I think that will work for new heights. It makes it much more easier, and it actually makes it seamless, because right now you don't need to stress them out and all that, because
Yeah.
one, through their onboarding you've been able to relay your expectations to them, and also assigning them buddies, they take them through everything that they need to know to really help a lot. And also a training can also do.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
also with people who are also within the already in the organization. And you mentioned that um, how would organization not stress
Yes,
them,
overwhelm the new
overwork
talents.
them?
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. So as I mentioned, I think these things will do for that as well. So assigning buddies is also very effective, especially if you do it well. Because, and if you are assigning a body, it shouldn't just be anyone at all. You should know the
Someone
body
who
as,
knows the
yes,
values and principles of the company.
exactly. So I think this will do.
So how do you then maintain the company culture? So you've mentioned, I think you've even touched on one, making sure that you assign the buddies or new hires to people who know the company culture. A company
Yes.
that is growing in a number of employees and new talents. How do you make sure that you keep the company's culture, a positive company's culture?
Okay, so for me, you should be having regular sessions
Mm-hmm.
with, your employees, trying to remind them of what the company actually stands for is very, very key.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people do forget. Yes, but
Yes.
if there's always that constant reminder that, okay, this is what we uphold, then it will really be something that will make the company culture remain as it is. And also, I think if you should also, if you are having a session where line managers, have that build a relationship with their team members, it also helps maintain that
Maintain the
culture.
company
Yeah,
culture.
so I'll say teamwork. Yeah,
Yes.
so teamwork is also another factor. So we have to ensure or embrace teamwork so that at least your culture could be as it is.
So that you keep having that positive culture. So my final question for you, we have to wrap up. My final question for you is, what would you say a perfect company culture is in your experience and as an HR expert?
Okay, so for me, a perfect culture or company culture is one that embraces flexibility,
Mm,
also change, and is concerned about the well-being of its
employee.
employees. Yes, so once these three key things are there, then definitely you are good to have a very perfect culture running within your organization.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much for your time.
All right,
And thank
thank
you
you
for
too.
sharing your insights about company culture and its success to organizations and companies.
All right,
Thank
thank you
you.
too.
Thank you so much for staying with us. And I believe this conversation has been insightful to you. And if you found yourself in a toxic company before, or you found yourself in an environment or an organization that affected your mental health, let us know in the comment section how you went about it and dealt with it. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you do not miss out on our next episode.